Are some of you willing
All
to
right,
be
good
interviewed
afternoon,
for the
Earth.
book?
This is Adam Sturch,
So
broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion House,
25
Mexico,
put their hands up.
working
They
on
couldn't say no,
oil painting
you know? And,
Jupiter's Thought.
And
All right,
there
today
was
the
a
next
woman
step will be in
there.
a alizarin
There
crimson
was a woman
blaze
there who says,
across
"I
the
can't even
edges
say
and
the
highlights
word."
with a bright orange.
Now, think about that one. Because if you're parents, if you're a parent, what does your kid start saying at 1.5 quite spontaneously? No. That's nature's wisdom. Because nature says you need a barrier behind which you can develop your yes. If you don't know how to say no, your yeses don't mean a thing. So you better say no automatically. So that's what, and the parents call that the terrible twos. I mean, that's nothing terrible about it, totally natural. A friend of mine, Ben was a doctor, and Harold was a doctor. Ben was his 2.5-year-old child, and Harold said to Ben one day, "Ben, do you want an apple?" And Ben said, "No, I want an apple." It's the will asserting itself. Now there's one woman there, and she said, "I can't sing." I said, "Okay, good. Give me $100 right now." She said, "I don't have $100. I said, "That's okay. After the meeting, we can go to the ATM machine and get it." She said, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I said, "I'm just trying to get you to say no to a ridiculous demand from a perfect stranger to whom you owe nothing whatsoever." She said, "I can't do it." So we're going to do an exercise now, okay? I'm going to ask each of you very quickly to find a partner, okay? All right, everybody's got a partner. Here's what's going to happen. I'm just going to give this 3 minutes each, okay? You're going to put a question to each other, and when the first partner puts the question to the second partner, the person who asks the question just shuts up. They just listen. You're not there to support or to validate or to empathize or to disagree with. You're just there to really get what your partner's saying. At the end of the 3 minutes, and that's all we have time for, usually I make it longer, I'm going to say stop, switch, in which case now turn it around, and on the second partner, we'll put the same question to the first partner. And then the second partner now just listens. With no agenda. Your only agenda is to really get what your partner's saying. Here's the question. Tell me where in your life you have difficulty saying no. All right, that's the question. Now this shows up. I'll repeat the question again. Tell me where in your life you have difficulty saying no. Now, this shows up usually in 2 major areas: personal relationships, spouses, friends, adult kids, parents, or in work. So whatever you identify your difficulty saying no, and here's what I mean, but there's a no that wants to be said. Like when I say to this woman, "Give me $100, she doesn't want to give me $100. So there's a no that wants to be said, and you're not saying it. Okay? Clear? All right? Please start.
That's in little ways, again, like, I enjoy being on all these things.
About talk to your partner. About that. Okay. This is part of an exercise that is in the myth of normal, but I can give you the other parts very simply. I've been told that this exercise alone, by the way, before I go on, I need to say something. I apologize to you. Okay? You're asking a question, and I allowed myself to get triggered and get into an argument with you. So I apologize to all of you. It's an example. It's an issue I lived with all my life. I used to believe as this lady does. I don't anymore. But I have tremendously strong feelings about it. No, excuse me. Let me just talk now. Okay, not now. All I'm saying is the proper response to your question would have been, I understand where you're coming from, but this is not the place for me to address that issue. That's what I should have said. Okay? And nothing you said explains my own emotional reaction. That's totally my own responsibility. Okay? All right. Now, this exercise, in terms of when you don't say no, that's the first part. You can do it once a week. Where this week did I not say no? Where there's a no that wanted to be said and I didn't say it? Just write it down. Second question. What is the impact of my not saying no? So if you actually look at the impact, fatigue, sleeplessness, resentment, worse, all kinds of physical symptoms, what's the impact? Self-criticism, shame, that's the impact. The third question is, what is the belief behind my inability to say no? If I say no, then they won't like me. Remember what I said about attachment versus authenticity? They won't like me. Or if I say no, I'm selfish. If I say no, I'm letting down my responsibilities. That's important, because once you look at the belief, you can actually question it. Is it really true? Does me saying no actually make me selfish? If I've been working all night, and you call me up to have a cup of coffee in the morning with you, and I said no, am I really being selfish if I say no to you? So that's the third question is, no, the fourth question is, where did I learn that belief? Well, you know where you learned it. You learned it in childhood. Fifth question is, who would I be if I didn't believe that? If I didn't believe that if I say no, that makes me a bad person, who would I be? And the last question is, where am I not saying yes? Where is there yes in my life that I want to express, that I want to manifest, that I want to live, but I'm not doing it because I'm too busy not saying no to all the other stuff. So those two little words, yes and no, make all the difference in your life. That's just a little exercise you can do or teach your clients if you want to. It really does change things very quickly. All right, questions? John, if you run that mic around.
Yeah. Let's take one.
As a social worker, I'm curious about ways to change our system, and I feel like you probably have a lot more experience with this than me. How would we start to advocate for this to be taught to physicians on that level, for like call it for PhD level, or how would we advocate for change within our system?
Well, look, so first of all, the change is happening. I mean, Harvard University now has this little mind-body institute, you know. That's good. Harvard University should be a mind-body institute, but at least they have something. More and more doctors are reaching out beyond traditional medicine to functional medicine, integrated medicine, and all this. these conferences that you have, people are coming
Mixing
out
up
to
a
hear
little
about
glue
trauma, people like Amy and
to hit these edges with
Vessel and myself and others.
Start.
This wouldn't have happened 10, 15 years ago. This itself is a sign of change. So I don't beat my head, I don't beat my head against walls trying to convince people of anything. I just think we should all just speak our truth in whatever platform we have, on whatever issue, whether it be political or personal or therapeutic or professional, and trust that there's a need for this in the world, and the world will respond, which it is. I mean, look, the first time I gave a public talk, after my first book got published, 25 years ago now, there were 6 people there, and 2 of them were my childhood friends. So, you know, just keep doing your thing is what I'm saying, but don't worry too much about trying to change institutions. Let natural erosion and evolution do that. Okay? Questions?
So we're going to take one from the web here. Alexandra asks if you could speak to the importance of language in our work. And do you encourage people to use mind-body terminology regularly? Why or why not?
It's not that I encourage people to use any kind of language. It's that I notice what kind of language they use. Because when somebody's talking to you, they're giving you a narrative, which is the thought content, but then there's the words they use to express the thought content. Those words are always meaningful. So you know, if I was working with somebody therapeutically, I'd pay a lot of attention to the language, to their verbal language, also to the tone of their voice. It's quite extraordinary. You know, sometimes, just to give one example, very mature and confident and competent women can sound like a 5-year-old little girl when they go back to that vulnerable, hurt little self. And then you notice that. You notice that. Let me tell you an amazing story. I had a person once who was diagnosed with what was then called multiple personality disorder. Now it's called dissociative identity disorder. So it was trauma-based. She split herself into all these personalities. One of her personas was that of an 8-year-old little boy. And she had asthma. So I prescribed for her a medication called theophylline. Theophylline is a liquid that you drink that keeps the airways from narrowing. So one day, the 8-year-old boy calls me. He's having tremors and he's got nauseated, he's got diarrhea. These are typical symptoms of theophylline overdose. When this person was in an 8-year-old body, they had the physiology of an 8-year-old. Now, but I was seeing things. It's been described in the medical literature. People in different personas with different EEGs. There are different responses to skin stimulation. I'm talking about the mind-body unity. And to go back to this question, a person's voice tells you so much about where they're coming from. So whatever you do, don't just pay attention to people's narrative. You don't get lost in the narrative. Pay much more attention to the language they use, to their body language, to the tone of their voice, and address them. Much more important than just dealing with the narrative. That's my answer to that question. Yeah?
Hi, yes, my question is, to what level do you assert your authenticity as a person who is working to recover that? And how much do you just give an emotionally immature person less access to you if they cannot accept that vulnerability with safety?
Well, wait a minute, so let's start with the first question, okay? Repeat the first question again.
To what level do you assert your authenticity as a person who is recovering authenticity?
To what level do you what?
Assert your own.
Assertive on that. Who wants to know?
Me. I could lie and say my clients, but I want to know.
Okay, you want to know, all right? So you're asking to what degree do you assert your authenticity?
When surrounded by unsafe people.
Mm-hmm. What do you do?
Well, I've done work on giving those people less access to myself,
Okay.
but I'm curious what your thoughts are on that approach.
Well, look. Now, partly it's situational. If I had 6 cops with their guns pointed at me, my first priority would not be to assert my authenticity. But barring that extreme situation, you have a decision to make. You can have 2 kinds of pain. The pain of self-suppression and be tense and self-denial, or the pain of not being liked by some other people. Attachment versus authenticity. I can't tell you what to choose. You have to decide. There might not be a pain-free option. And sometimes the best you can do, no, if you can have authenticity and attachment, great. If you have friends who can accept your authentic manifestation and say, oh, great, well, that's good. But if some people in your life can't handle it because they're not ready for it, and that's not what they bought in for when they established a relationship with you, then you have a choice to make. Which pain would I rather have? The pain of self-suppression or the pain of perhaps being rejected? Your call. But there may not be a pain-free option. Okay? At least not in the short term.
Thank you.
All right? Does that answer it? Thank you.
Okay, one from the web. Tiffany shares, she says she's on board with most for clients.
Yeah.
But the mothers that she's worked with who's lost, your children have died by suicide or homicide,
Yeah.
trauma plus grief plus injustice entwined, it feels intolerable to them. And she says, who am I to say that it is not?
What feels intolerable to them?
Just the trauma and grief, the enormity of it all, I think is what she said.
It is intolerable. It's too much. It's not what any human beings should have to deal with. But I don't understand the question, because this is what it goes back to what I said. You have to be able to be with people's pain. You have to be able to be with people's pain. I've worked with people recently who've lost entire families, and I have to be with their pain. And so, what I would say to the questioner is, if you're not able to be with the pain of these mothers who've so tragically lost their beloved children, for whom they would have given their lives if they could have. If you can't be with their pain, then recognize your limitation. Or do the work that'll help you be with their pain and stay compassionate and still believe in life. Maybe you can achieve that stage. If you can, you'll be able to be with the pain of these women. If you can't, you might not be the person hands, wave your hands.
Oh, right here.
Oh, yeah, okay, hi, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
I was just wondering if you ever struggle with finding the feeling
Alright,
of hope.
so that gives
being
the
hopeful,
blue aura,
doing
and I also started the planet. I want a planet Earth floating in the space
Okay,
behind
and you
it.
might say I'm hopeless, okay?
Since it's Jupiter's thought, it makes sense.
Because hope is for something to
So that will
happen in
be
the future.
a realistically
I don't go
rendered.
there. I don't know what's
Earth.
gonna happen in the
It's
future.
a little dark on the right side, it makes it look a little wonky, but it's
When I look at some
pretty
situations,
circular. And we're starting to
I
get
just
some
see
nice
the beautiful
texture
words.
developed throughout the brushwork in
That's my best assessment.
the main surface area, which is his skin.
But I deal in possibility. My question is, what is possible for people? So when I see somebody like Howard,
So that's the process, and we'll continue that and do another layer, and another layer, and another layer, until it looks right, along with the rendering of the Earth, and perhaps some stars in the background. But I'm liking the way this is developing. It's pretty simple, but it's nice. So thank you for watching. Have a good day, Earth. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting Jupiter's Thought.
so I just believe in possibility. I believe in human possibility. And